but yeah. So he lives
He lives somewhere.
out there, out west.
He had some heart surgery. So he's the first one out there.
Hey, thank you for everyone attending. This is the April 23rd joint meeting of the City Council and the City of Joliet Environmental Commission. Go ahead and call the meeting to order and take roll call.
Mayor Odekirk,
Here.
Councilman Dickinson,
Here.
Councilwoman Gavin, Councilman Girl, Councilman Huck,
Here.
Councilman Morris, Councilman Mudrin,
Here.
Councilwoman Quillman, Councilman Turk,
Here.
Environmental Commission, Mike Beely,
Here.
Gary Davidson, John Hurtko,
Here.
Wayne Horn,
Here.
Mark Kaufman,
Here.
Maria Rafek, Jim Riggs,
Here.
Richard Rodriguez.
Present.
Elsa, if I could briefly, I would like to thank the Environmental Commission for this joint meeting. I think it's a good idea. Thank you everyone else from the public who's here. And would also want to recognize State Rep John Connor. Thank you for being part of this today. If you want to say anything, Mr. Representative.
Thank you, Mayor. The only reason I'm here tonight, I wanted to say thank you specifically to you, the members of the council, Marty Shanahan and Allison Swisher, for helping county and myself come up with a solution to the issue of water, the water system in the Fairmont area. And as a result of the city taking, if the city does in fact take over that system, that means I'm going to have an interest in where the city's getting its water from in the future, so that's really the reason I'm here. But primarily it's to say thank you for the city for stepping up and helping out my constituents in the Fairmont area, so thank you.
Thank you.
All right, well, thank you everyone for being here. I'm quickly going to run through some welcome and introductions. My name is Allison Swisher. I'm the Director of Public Utilities for the City of Joliet. I want to recognize the project team that we have here tonight who will be assisting us. Nick Gornick is the Plant Operations Superintendent. Amy Wagner is our new Deputy Director of Engineering. And then our project team consists of Teresa O'Grady from Crawford Murphy and Tilley, Joe Johnson with Stantec, Jeff Freeman with EEI, Ty Basalki with Crawford Murphy and Tilley, Nick Stepina with Stantec, and then Tracy Morse with Images Inc. So just a quick agenda for the meeting tonight. We're going to start out with a quick group presentation. The Environmental Commission has been working on this issue every month for about the past year now. I want to make sure the City Council is up to speed on where we're at with our alternative water source study. And then what we're going to do is we're going to break up into small groups. And the focus of tonight, as the mayor said many times, is to really have an opportunity for the council and the Environmental Commission to share their thoughts on some of the decision criteria that'll be used for making this decision. After that, we will be doing a post-discussion survey of the decision criteria. We have a survey in your packets that we would ask for you to fill out after we have the group discussions. Okay, and then we are going to do come back and do a group presentation where we'd all kind of, after we have the small groups, compile that information and just share our thoughts with the whole group. Quickly, I want to give an overview of where we've come so far. So the first phase of the study has been completed, and this was completed in January of 2019. Last time I spoke to the council was at the completion of that first phase of the study, where really the goal was to look at all of the alternatives out there, make sure we were not overlooking any potential alternatives, and really just start from the beginning. There's been a lot of studies and information in the past that has this issue's been looked at since the 1960s. We wanted to take a fresh look at everything and really make sure that we had all the information available to make the best decision for the city. Just want to send a reminder of the big picture of why we are here. We did modeling, updated modeling from the Illinois State Water Survey as part of the Phase 1 study. And what they found is that at our current usage rates, we will not meet maximum day demands by 2030. So, as I mentioned, when we looked at Phase 1, we looked at 14 different alternatives. As you can see from the map, they are all surrounding the area of Joliet, consisted of Lake Michigan sources, river sources, and then also groundwater sources. Based on the analysis that we completed in Phase 1, which was looking at water quality and water quantity, the options that were advanced then to Phase 2 were narrowed down to 5 different alternatives, those being the Kankakee River, the Illinois River, and then 3 variations on Lake Michigan water, Chicago Department of Water Management, DuPage Water Commission, and the Southland Water Agency. And I'll just mention that there's many variations on these, but these are the 3 main sources that we are looking at currently. Okay, so Phase 1 is done. We've moved into Phase 2, which we started in February. And the main goal of the second phase of the study is to take a deeper dive into those 5 alternatives, really look into how, what the improvements that will be necessary for those alternatives and the associated cost. It'd be critical to know that at this point we don't have the costs calculated. This question everyone wants to know is how much it's going to cost, and that information is being worked on right now and will be presented later, later this fall. Also looking at Phase 2 is Phase 2 criteria, which not only is cost, but also governance and control, risk, and then a regional versus a Joliet alone solution. And that's really going to be the focus of tonight's workshop, is looking at those 4 decision criteria and sharing thoughts on the importance of those. And so the big picture goal is that we are looking to select an alternative water source by the end of this year. Staff will be providing that information to the Environmental Council and Environmental Committee and the City Council at the end of this year for a recommendation and ultimately a decision. This map just shows the Phase 2 water source alternatives that are being evaluated. Again, that's the Illinois River, the Kankakee River, and then 3 different variations on Lake Michigan water. A big component of the Phase 2 is going to be water conservation. We know that if we can reduce the demands on the aquifer, we can not only extend the life of the aquifer, but also then we can reduce the capital expenditures necessary for the new water source. I'll just recognize Environmental Commissioner member Maria Anna Rafak, who's been very instrumental in forming a water conservation subcommittee. And with that subcommittee, we've already accomplished quite a bit. We have developed a rebate program for installation of low-flow toilets, and also developed a subsidy for rain barrels. We have information on the back table about those. Another major component of Phase 2 has been stakeholder engagement. I know I've seen many of the council members at various neighborhood association meetings. Our goal here is to not really expect the public to come to meetings such as these, but really go to where the public is, and that's by going to various events such as Star Wars Days and Taste of Joliet and Kids Fest and various other events where people are going to be anyway, and really try and get the message out that way. Also, we have our monthly Environmental Commission meetings, which are the second Tuesday of the month, and those are of course open to the public, and all are welcome to attend and make comment there. Another part of what we're looking at now is our brand. I felt this project was significant enough that we needed to do some branding to make sure people recognized the work we're doing. So we have launched our website, rethinkwaterjoliet.org. And I think it's very powerful what we're trying to accomplish here. We're rethinking the source of our water, rethinking the value of water, and rethinking how we use water. So what are the goals of Phase 2? Like I mentioned, we need to determine the extent of the improvements for each of these selected water source alternatives. And that's what we're working on right now. The project team is going through that technical engineering analysis so that we can develop costs. We're further refining and prioritizing the decision criteria, and that's, like I said, is the main goal of the meeting tonight, is to start having those preliminary discussions about what criteria we're going to be using to make this very important decision. And then finally, our goal is to assist the Environmental Commission and City Council in the selection of an alternative water source by the end of 2019. Okay, so at this moment, I just wanted to pause, and I know, like I said, the city council members haven't heard, haven't received an update on the study since we presented the phase 1 results. So I just wanted to have an opportunity if there's any questions at this time.
Mayor,
Yes.
one's kind of procedural for tonight's event. With the public being an open meeting, if we break into small groups, how are they going to be able to hear what everybody's saying?
Yeah, so, are the microphones on for the council?
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, there you go.
You want me to yell?
Okay, so his question was, how is the public going to be involved in tonight's workshop?
Right, with so many groups meeting.
Yes, and so each corner is going to be a different small group, and there's going to be 4 topics, and the topics will rotate, and so the public will have the opportunity to observe all of the groups and wander around and as they see fit during that process.
And another question I had, Allison, we actually have more than 5 alternatives, because in the list that you showed us, I don't see the alternative for Joliet to go to Lake Michigan, dip a straw in, and sell to other communities coming back.
Yeah, that's a variation on the Southland Water Agency. So we've been meeting with them to discuss how that option could potentially be implemented. So that's just, like I said, there are multiple variations on each of those alternatives. So like as you said, there's more than 5 different variations, but those are the 5 main, I guess I would say, routes that we would take.
Well, are we guaranteed an allotment from the powers that be from Lake Michigan, the Kankakee River? Are we guaranteed an allotment?
Yeah, so one of the questions I always get when I go talk to the public is, can we really get Lake Michigan water? And we met with IDNR, it's the Illinois Department of Natural Resources, and they informed us that due to the decreased water usage in the city of Chicago, there's actually a significant amount of water that is available for communities that currently don't have an allotment to obtain one. So, and since we are a deep aquifer community, then there are certain qualifications we don't have to meet to get the Lake Michigan allocation.
And one last question preliminarily too, and maybe we're going to cover that in 4 groups tonight. Excuse me. What headway have we made based, considering the cost, reliability, the infrastructure, and the routes needed in the 5 options, or 5 plus?
I couldn't hear. So what work have we done?
Yeah, where are we at? Do we have some kind of a synopsis or analysis of the cost, reliability, the infrastructure necessary, and the route needed for these 5 options?
So that is what we're working on right now. So that information isn't available. That's what we're going to be working on this spring and summer. It's a lot of work that goes into that. So we'll have that information available this fall to present on those alternatives.
I also have a question. Aside from what the source of water is, we're going to have to redo our water system here in Joliet. Do we have an idea of the time it's going to take to do that and the cost associated with that?
That's also a major component of the phase 2 study. So, as you recognize, our system right now is very decentralized, and whatever option we go with in the future, we're going to be bringing water in at one point and then having to disperse it throughout the city. So there are going to be significant upgrades to our infrastructure, and those costs and that work is going to be evaluated as part of phase 2.
And again, maybe it's preliminary, but I know lake water is cleaner than river water, so it costs less to clean it. Does that affect the infrastructure that we're going to have to build here within Joliet? The different sources, maybe different.
Right, so the different sources have different raw water quality. However, after it goes through the treatment process, the finished water of, say, Kankakee River versus Lake Michigan is very comparable. So there would not be impacts to our infrastructure based on that.
Okay. Thank you.
One last request, if you would, Mayor, too. We have 8 members of the commission here, and I thank you as a council member for all the hard work and the big checks that you're getting for doing this, right? I wouldn't mind, before we break into groups, if they have anything to share, sharing their perspective, because they've been doing the process for 18 months, actually the members of the commission.
Yeah, are we going to open up to the public either? Are there going to be public comments at all?
I mean, if you want to do it now, I have like 5 more slides
Okay.
to do before we break into small groups, so maybe I'll do those, and if you wanted to have comments then.
That's fine. Thank
Okay.
you.
Okay, so I really wanted to, before we broke into the small groups, kind of provide some more information on the criteria which again is going to be the main items of discussion in the small groups. So we've identified on here baseline decision criteria. Now these are criteria that are essential. Whatever water source we select, it has to provide adequate water quality, it has to have enough water, and it has to be sustainable. So we're considering these baseline criteria. So if, as we move forward during phase 2, we find that any of the sources are not going to meet these requirements, then we would not consider them further. So that's why tonight's meeting, small groups are not focusing on these criteria because, again, they're essential and all of the alternatives must meet these criteria. Based on what we completed in phase 1, we believe that the 5 alternatives we're currently looking at all do meet this criteria. But again, as we proceed through phase 2, if we find that they don't, then we would not consider them further. So again, the phase 2 decision criteria, we're going to look at cost, we're going to look at governance and control, risk, and then regional versus Joliet alone. And these will be discussed in much more detail when we break into the small groups, but I just want to give you a quick overview on each one. Cost seems pretty straightforward. As I mentioned, we do not have cost information to present tonight, but we'd like to have a general discussion on costs, such as, how much of a rate increase is the city willing to support? No matter which option is selected, it's going to be a significant expenditure. However, there could be variations in the amounts that they cost. Cost includes many components. It could be there's the initial capital costs that could be building a new water treatment plant, building the water transmission pipelines, or if we go with a purchase water cost option, the cost of purchasing that water, and then any potential buy-in costs. And then for any of the options, there's operation and maintenance costs, though for some of the options it would be potentially more significant if we were to operate our own water treatment plant. So those are all just components of costs that we ask everyone to consider as we move into the small groups. Governance and control. How much control does a city want over its water source? We find that there's 3 options that the city could decide to proceed with. Option 1, where we own and operate the entire system, and therefore we would control all of the decision making. Option 2 would be the city joins a water commission, and under this option we would have some control over decision making through a vote. However, that's typically only a single vote amongst many commission members. Option 3 would be we are not member of commission, we are just a customer and purchase water. And in that option, you would have minimal control or decision making. Okay, the third group is going to be just talking about risk. How much risk is a city willing to accept? Typically, when we think of providing water, want to be pretty risk adverse. There's risk of being short-term and long-term. And while we can mitigate a lot of risks, the different alternatives will have varying degrees of it and different components of risk. There could be risk to cost. If you are part of a commission, those costs could be shared amongst many. If the city decides to go without joining a commission, there could be more significant risks. Risk to schedule. Again, if the city decides to proceed without partners, there might not be as much risk to the schedule because we would have complete control over the decision making. Risk in partnering, risk in operations and maintenance. If we have a pipeline that travels across many different towns and communities, then there's risk in operating that system in other jurisdictions. And then of course there's risk in permitting. Each option has varying levels of permitting required and different nuances to those that we will be evaluating during phase 2. The last group is going to be talking about a regional solution versus a Joliet alone solution, and trying to gauge how important a regional approach is to the city of Joliet. We have been looking at these alternatives from both perspectives. There's a significant difference in the water demand scenarios if the city is going to proceed alone or proceed as looking to be a regional solution. And even regional solution has different components to it. Are we partnering with communities, or are we going to be selling water to communities? And again, this decision impacts the selection of the alternative water source and again, the level of improvements necessary. So at this point, I just want to go over some of the goals and ground rules for tonight. Again, the main goal is to obtain input from the City Council and the Environmental Commission members. In these small groups, we want to focus on the decision criteria. We want to really try and stay focused on those topics. I know there's a lot of questions everyone might have about specific water sources, but we'll have the project team available after the meeting if you want to have discussion about those topics. We only have 15 minutes to cover each topic, so again, we'd like to try and stay focused on specifically looking at the decision criteria. So at this time, we can break into small groups, or if you want to have an opportunity for comments.
Yeah.
So right now, we have no idea of any costs, right?
That's correct.
When do you think we'll have an idea of the costs?
We'll be presenting that in the fall, this fall.
Okay.
Mayor,
Yes.
is there anybody from the commission who put in a lot of this time and effort that would like to make comments prior to breakup to give us kind of background and context?
Did you want to make any comments? Okay, I mean, you don't have to speak if you don't want to. Okay.
Thank you, Councilman Hug. My name is Gary Davidson. I'm chairing the committee. I have the pleasure of herding this group of feral cats. We've actually, I'm very pleased at the group of talent, the diverse background that you've assembled here. It's been very, very interesting to see what productivity we've gotten out of this. As you pointed out, Councilman Hug, there are a number of variations from the various 5 final candidates that we selected. We started out with, some 20 potential large 10,000 foot scale sources. We established criteria for that for viability and cost and the relative cleanliness of those. And based on that criteria, there were some that, as we started diving deep into it, we could simply invalidate as not healthy alternatives to the city of Joliet, either from a viability perspective, cost perspective. Each member of the commission has their own perspective on things. How I view it as the chairman is looking this on basically if we put a microeconomic scale of we put cost on one axis and we put quality and viability on another axis. Our goal and our charge and as a recommending body to the council is to find that maximum point to recommend the alternative which will minimize risk and maximize return. And when I say maximize return, what we're really looking at is providing the lowest cost alternative that impacts the residents of the city of Joliet while delivering the overall greatest quality. So we're currently now breaking down and diving deep into those 5 alternatives. The Southland Water Commission, as you point out, Councilman Hug, would include the viability of an option to go directly to Lake Michigan and the city control that. Obviously, the city of Joliet has some advantages with bonding authority that other communities don't have. And so we found this to be a really good opportunity to start sharing with you in the small group session what our initial findings were, get your feedback so that as we start diving deep into these 5 individual categories and further narrowing it down for you, you as the ultimate decision makers can make a final decision.
So at this time, everyone on their packet has a group number. Group 1 is going to be in this corner. We'll raise up the screen and turn off the projectors. Group 2 will be back in that corner. Group 3 will be back with Nick Gornick talking about risk, and then Group 4 will be up here with me to start talking about a Joliet versus a regional solution.
Thank you.
Good, perfect timing. You got your group number? Okay. I'm sorry? One is right
I've been in the house for 60 years. What's that? The lady that called back was garbage. Yeah, what's going on?
Yes, I
She has next door.
yeah.
15 feet away from there, there's a park. And I don't know which man, you can't get your garbage. Right. So we talked, I talked to Maggie, I think we're going to do is just put in the and that way, hey, everybody else can try it. That's a good solution. So that's a good solution. That's one good solution, as opposed to trying to talk to the neighbors and not have a park there and waste management. Get the cans. Okay, no, I'm the driver, all right, I know that it's not her fault. And the next day, next time you're the driver. So 60 years.
If you go to the Rethink site and you sign in with your email, there's also a spot to post any questions in there.
Let's go afterwards.
I was thinking spring was up there.
Welcome everyone to maybe
I'll do introductions real quick. 15 minutes is going to go by quick, so we'll kind of get started. My name is Joe Johnson. I'm a Stantec, one of the engineering firms who's working with the to study and evaluate the rigs.